The stock of the day, stocks, I should say, Santos and Woodside, really in focus today after the two confirmed they're in preliminary talks to create an $80 billion oil and gas giant. If the deal materializes, it would be the largest corporate deal in Australia for several years and would create the biggest LNG producer in Australia. So Woodside says that talks are confidential and incomplete and that there's no certainty an agreement would materialize, saying it will continue to assess a range of opportunities to create and deliver value for its shareholders. Any deal would likely be closely scrutinized by the ACCC. There is the share price reaction so far today. Santos up on the news, Woodside Energy down. Guys, I'd like to get your view on these two companies, what this potential merger might mean for the broader oil and gas sector as well. Because, Luke, I mean, clearly Santos has been struggling and frustrated with its share price, underperformance, let's call it that. So, I mean, would this be a big boon for Santos shareholders?
Look, that would all depend on the integration of the merger, but a fair point, Nadine. And I mean, the CEO reading the AFR today certainly pulled no punches to that sort of sentiment you're talking about. I think his exact words was that the share price has stalled and the board is willing to do anything they can to unstall it. Looking at M&A, spinning off segments, and strategic reviews in general. So. There's obviously appetite for this to happen, and again, reading the AFR today, it's hard to say exactly where things are up to, but they sort of said about 5%, of the discussions have happened so far. So still very preliminary, a lot of hurdles to overcome. There'll be a lot of parties in the room and a lot of conversations involved. But it is interesting to note that, this isn't one party approaching the other. It does sound quite mutual, and usually when that's the case, things can be worked out. And it is worth noting that this isn't a standalone sort of consolidation or M&A in that space. Again, AFR article points out we've sort of gone from 4 large oil and gas businesses / segments to potentially just one after Oil Search and Santos merged last year. Woodside acquired BHP's assets, and if these 2 last remaining ones were to merge, then I had a quick look at the energy sector, and I think the next largest oil play, you get down to something just around a couple of $100 million. So, it would really consolidate the ability for an investor to get access to an oil and gas producer on the ASX. But, that can inherently be a good thing. And again, people have pointed out, if you look globally, there's been a lot of M&A in this space, and most of it has been those big majors really consolidating their position in what is potentially, not a dying industry, but a stagnating industry as we continue down this path of electrification. So you want to be at scale and you want to be, one of the big producers. So I see the rationale for it. As shareholders, I don't think you take any action from this today. This is all still very early, still preliminary. I think it's positive that they're talking about it and thinking about it, though, and certainly that long term of where they sit. But yeah, look, I wouldn't be. I would hold it if you're there today. I wouldn't be jumping in on the back of it just because of news like this. I would still come back to your individual views on the businesses and most likely the outlook for oil moving forward.
And you're not a big fan of energy, or you are? Do you have any energy exposure in your portfolio?
No, and I don't have many sort of commodity producers in general. My view is I struggle to sort of forecast where I think those prices will go, and I think most people do. I mean, I could rewind 2 months ago, and there were predictions that oil was going to stay above $100, $110 a barrel because of the dynamics of the industry and what OPEC was doing. And here we are, a couple of months later, and the price has slid, and now people are, forecasting it could go to $50. Like that's the issue I have, and so it's the main problem with these businesses. And the other one as well, which again the Santos CEO was flagging, is that they're excessively capital intensive, and so he was calling out that being that big a business as a merged entity, the balance sheets can obviously fund that capital intensity a lot easier. So. Not for me, but again, if you're there, I wouldn't take any action on this today and wait and see how it all plays out.
Okay, thanks. Now, Claude, your view on this Santos Woodside potential merger, and also just does this make them more attractive investment opportunities? Would you be buying Santos in the hopes that something gets done? Just give us a bit of insight.
Well, I do think it makes sense for the same reasons Luke mentioned. Definitely scale will be an advantage. They'll have more market power, and not that, commodity price takers have much market power, but at least, say in suppliers, if nothing else. And it makes sense. But otherwise from that, these are both cyclical businesses. If you look at, I was looking at some of the long-term profit charts for both of these companies, and, obviously we have been in a good time for them in terms of their revenue and profits. And you could argue that we've had the kind of good part of the cycle for both companies, really, and that the downside of the cycle can be quite harsh for them, given that, as you said, they're capital intensive, Luke. So that means that high interest rates, it's sucking up more and more working capital, it hurts your cash flow. And at the same time, if indeed we're going to get 4-7 rate cuts or something coming up, which I struggle to believe, I'm not sure what the time frame on that was, but that would imply a slowing economy, which is hardly going to be great for them. So, yeah, overall, I wouldn't find them that attractive right now, but I do think that these kind of businesses can make sense for somebody who acknowledges the cycle. But I think you probably got to try and time the cycle, and it wouldn't seem that favorable to me at the moment.